It is Kieran Trippier. It is delicious! Glorious! Glorious!
Walker in there too. Luke Shaw! Harry Kane wants it played into him. He chooses Grealish instead. It's Grealish! It's Kane! Nothing like this has happened for a long time. Here's the overhead kick from Dyer. Palmer finds Watkins. Watkins turns! Watkins scores!
Hello and welcome back to the Gate 102 podcast. I hope I find you well and I hope you've enjoyed our recent episodes. My last one I did was me talking about that memorable 6-1 win over Panama, a game that meant England had qualified for the knockout stages of the 2018 World Cup. Their next objective was to try and top the group, and that leads us nicely onto today's game, which is following on from that, as England faced Belgium, and to top the group they needed to win. So I'll start by going through the team, and this is quite an interesting one because Southgate decided to change practically the whole side in order to give players a game and also rest some of the players who played in the first two games. So it was Jordan Pickford in goal, a back five of Trent Alexander-Arnold, Phil Jones, John Stones, Gary Cahill and Danny Rose. And this was actually Cahill's last game for England. Moving on to midfield, Eric Dyer started in the deeper pivot role, and then it was Fabian Delph and Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain who played either side of him, and then a front two was Jamie Vardy and Marcus Rashford. So 8 changes from the win against Panama, with only Pickford, Stones and Loftus-Cheek managing to maintain their place. And like I said, the reason Gareth made so many changes was to make sure the squad was fresh and also to give players opportunities. And I sort of agree with him. And looking back, the decision didn't cost us as we went on to reach the semi-final. However, there was a risk that making so many changes from the team that wins the opening 2 games could potentially kill the momentum. I mean, thankfully, it didn't, as England beat Colombia, but let's say England lost to Colombia, then it would look like a poor decision, making so many changes for this game. So the team Southgate picked got quite a range of different opinions, to be honest, but moving on to what happened during the game. Now, bearing in mind, England needed to win in order to win the group, so a draw wouldn't be good enough. So this obviously meant England went with quite an attacking game plan. But it was Belgium who had the better chances, really. And the first major chance they had came from England's own doing, really. Batshuayi had the shot, and it sort of went through Pickford, and everyone was expecting him to save it, but it sort of slipped out of his hands, and it was going in, and it was Cahill who was sort of scrambling back and clearing it off the line brilliantly to deny Belgium from scoring early on. I mean, the Belgian players were convinced that it crossed the line, but with goal line technology and VAR, it was never going to be given. But yeah, an early scare for England. And I think considering how well England played in the first half of both the Tunisia and the Panama game, this was very different. And obviously Belgium were a better team, but I spoke about England making 8 changes. Well, Belgium made 9 changes from the previous game. So in total, it meant there was 17 changes from the previous game where both teams won, which is quite crazy, really, think about it. And it's a World Cup record for the most changes in a starting lineup prior to the previous game. But it was like both teams were experimenting, and neither team had the strongest team out, which sort of made the game almost like a friendly, really. And it's quite a uneventful first half, really. Despite it being a attractive fixture on paper, sort of the deciders, whoever wins tops the group, the tempo of the game just wasn't there. And believe it or not, fans from both countries started doing Mexican ways midway through the first half. And that's how exciting the game was. And it's pretty crazy, really, think about it. During a World Cup game, an important World Cup game, you've got Mexican waves going on. It probably says a lot how the game's going. But I think the reason for all this is because there've been a wholesale of changes from the previous games by both teams, which probably made the game a bit of a non-event, really. England barely created a noteworthy chance, really, in the first 45 minutes. Rashford had his moments at times, but Vardy found it difficult to make any kind of impression. And the wing-backs, obviously Trent and Danny Rose, they seemed quite reluctant to get up the pitch, and they failed to create any chances, really. And England would have hoped for better in the second half. It wasn't the great start, as 5 minutes after the restart, Belgium opened the scoring with a brilliant goal, curling one in from the right-hand side. Pickford had no chance. And yeah, Belgium were 1-0 up, and this is a shame, but one thing that's very memorable about this goal is more the celebration. Batshuayi, I remember, got the ball after it had gone in the net, and I don't know what he was trying to do, but he kicked it against the post, probably unintentionally, and then the ball fired back in his face at some speed. So it's quite a bizarre moment, especially when it wasn't even Batshuayi who scored, and he got injured celebrating. Yeah, that'll be in some World Cup funniest moments documentary in a few years' time, probably. Yeah, a strange situation, but Belgium were 1-0 up, and if I'm honest, this meant England got the pitch a bit more, and by conceding, it gave England that little bit of urgency. And not longer after Belgium scored, Rashford found himself 1-on-1 with the goalkeeper, and you're thinking, this is a chance here. He's in here, and it was the first time Rashford had been clean through on goal all game, really, and he had the shot, which was saved by Courtois, but he just thought that was the chance, and looking back, he could have even passed it to Loftus-Cheek, who would have been able to find the net, and if he passed it to Loftus-Cheek, it's probably a guaranteed goal, but Rashford took the shot, and it was well saved, to be fair. But that was the only sort of noticeable chance England had in the second half. But I don't think Southgate was too bothered about losing, to be honest, as with minutes to go, bearing in mind we're losing 1-0, he decides to bring on Danny Welbeck instead of Harry Kane, who was obviously the leading goal scorer at the tournament. And obviously Southgate would have wanted to win, but at the same time, if he was so desperate, he'd have brought Kane on, surely, instead of Welbeck. So I think he sort of used this game to give everyone a chance to play. And as I said before, Southgate got a lot of stick for making so many changes, but you've got to consider Belgium did the exact same thing, and also other teams in the tournament lost key players because they've been overused, and the heat as well. It's really hot, and so I sort of understand why Gareth made these changes. And the downside to that, it did make it a slightly flat game, and it lacked creativity from both teams, to be honest. But a brilliant goal for Belgium is what separated two teams. But it was a defeat for England, meaning they finished second in the group. And if I'm honest, I don't like saying this, but this was potentially a good thing, there's no such thing as an easy side of a draw in a tournament, because anything can happen in knockout football. But in finishing second, it sort of meant England were on the more favourable side of the draw. And on paper, should we say, and this meant they'd face Colombia in the round of 16, as opposed to Japan. And it also mean if they did get to the quarters, which they did play either one of, they wouldn't have to face Brazil, which is what Belgium had to do. But Colombia was still a really good team, and they played brilliantly in the group stages. But I'll be talking about that game next week. One of my favourite England games, and probably my all-time favourite England moment, with that Eric Dyer penalty. So yeah, that's to come next week. But I hope you've enjoyed this episode. I know the game wasn't the most enthralling, but hopefully it's brought back some memories along the way. So thank you for listening. Always appreciated. Feel free to get in touch with your memories from the tournament, and yeah, I'll read them out. And yeah, until next time, take care of yourselves. I'll see you soon.